money, lots of money being spent on this. And he raises an issue about legalization. If you legalize this, you know, Jean Charest came out with his balanced budget proposal just yesterday. I mean, you legalize this, you balance the budget in 5 minutes, right? There's so much foregone tax dollars out there that the government's not collecting. How about that for an argument?
Well, I guess if you talk about purity and whatnot, say that we better have a vendor at every corner for marijuana.
As we now do.
The government could well raise funds. Is this the way we want our government to be raising funds? I would like to see them get out of tobacco. I'd like to see them getting out of alcohol. I would like to see our society moving away from intoxicants. I'd like us to move away from Prozac. But then you see, I'm the guy that's treated all these problems. I've treated the family breakdown.
And you've seen it at its worst. You haven't seen it at its, if I can call it this, at its best, where it's under control and people are using it appropriately.
Indeed. Percentage-wise, how many people have that addictive potential? About 7%. And I think moving down that road is absolutely the wrong way to go,
so
from my experience.
If it's only 7%, I mean, we've had this argument about gambling. You know, why do you deny 97% of the people the right to go to a casino in this province? Because 3% of the people will develop gambling problems. Same thing for this. Why deny 93% of the people, by your numbers, the option of doing this if only 7% of the people are addictive?
Because when you let them go ahead, you give the wrong signal, and we move into another whole host of individual substances. That 7%, those addictive personalities who use Prozac, who use alcohol, whose families break up over this, those are the individuals that I have seen and I have treated.
But what's
and
the
that's
point of
why I'm so
criminalizing them?
absolutely against moving down this road.
What's the point of turning these people into criminals? Drugs should be a health and social issue. I agree entirely with you if you want to say that we should educate people. We need honest education about the effects of alcohol, tobacco, Prozac, aspirin, marijuana, whatever. We need honest education. We're not giving honest education right now, and we're actually causing a lot of harm because a lot of people assume that, gee, alcohol is okay because it's legal. We need honest education, and I think that's what we need to do. We also need to look at some of the social issues behind why people are using drugs in harmful ways. And that's, I suspect that many of the people you see have a problem that's not perhaps caused entirely by drugs. It may be caused by their social circumstances, and some of them may be using drugs or alcohol as an escape vehicle. We need to look at the underlying problems, as with so many other things in the society.
Education's important, and I wouldn't argue with you for a second. But why would you want to educate 14% users rather than the 7%? Well, why would you want to give an open-door policy to kids who today say, many of them, in a study here in Ontario, they had a high school study. Do the penalties prevent you from using? And do you know that some 750,000 kids in Ontario would use more if the penalties weren't there?
You know, the Addiction Research Foundation testified before the Health Subcommittee during the debate on Bill C-7 that in fact the law is not a deterrent. The largest single deterrent to the use of marijuana amongst non-users is the fact that it may cause them health consequences. And that's what we should be doing, is talking about the health consequences. Don't smoke.
Health consequences? You mean they're bad? Then why would you be supporting going farther?
Because if you use it, no, you can use marijuana in responsible ways that do not cause long-term care. Look, the British Medical Journal, the Lancet, just came out in favor of that. The Royal Australasian College of Physicians and Surgeons just came out in favor of decriminalizing. Used responsibly. Educate people about the responsible use of...
How frequent?
Well, that's...
Answer that for me.
Maybe once a month, maybe once a week.
Once a week, and what age?
Look at how many...
What age?
Okay, let's look in the situation of the fellow who called us. The fellow who called us and saying that he shared it with his, I guess, his 16 or 17-year-old child. I would not see any great harm in an adult, in a family setting like that, introducing a child to something, and it's no different than introducing somebody to the responsible use of wine. If that person educates the child and says, look, don't use too much of this...
You're saying something that's so foolish. When that 16-year-old drops off with her marks, when she's no longer interested in going to school, when she decides that she's I mean, there are other consequences here.
But you're making that, but that is not the inevitable consequence of using cannabis.
Those are the consequences that I personally see.
Because you see the worst case scenarios. You don't see people coming to you. You're a physician. People come to you because they're sick. You don't see the vast majority of
gentlemen. Let me jump in here because Brian from Huntsville is about to mutiny if he doesn't get on the air. Brian, just before I take your call, could I remind folks that we've heard many of the callers tonight so far say that they are in favor of this. If anybody has a real objection to this, we'd like to hear from them too. 1-888-STUDIO 2 is the number to call. If you're very much against the legalization of marijuana, as the federal government is now studying, we'd like to hear from you as well. Okay, Brian, come on in here. It's your turn.
How are you tonight?
Hi, good, thank you.
I'm all right. I'm just calling. I'm quite into this situation myself with a court case. I've been charged with cultivation and possession for the purpose, which they did drop that charge, but I'm still charged with cultivation. I've been using, actually, and growing this holy herb for some 20 years. I'm 40 years old. I have a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old at home, doing quite well in school.
Have they tried it?
No, not to my knowledge. I keep it quite under lock and key away from them.
Do they know you do it?
Yes, they have since the first time they came home from school, in grade school, and was telling me about how the police were in there and, you know, how they go through their things with the illicit drug scene and show them this and show them that and ask them questions about it, trying to entice information out of them, I would gather.
When are you going to court with your case?
I was actually in court today, but it was put off till next week.
Okay, so you go back. Eventually you're answering charges which could put you, what, behind bars?
For a period of time. So I believe I've been told 60 days on weekends. I've been employed for, well, 25 years. I'm a volunteer firefighter for the last 15 years. Pretty good rapport with my community, small community.
Brian, have you ever been stoned when you had to leap into action as a volunteer firefighter?
Well, if you call it stoned, sir, I guess
whatever
I
the
would
term
have
is.
to say so, yeah.
Well, whatever the term. So you've gone out to fight fires under the influence?
Not like to the scene of smoking 3 or 4 reefers and going to the scene, but if I've just had a puff, I do have Crohn's disease. I should tell you, I've had that since 1983. I suffer from severe cramps, mild to severe nausea.
Okay, Brian, stand by a second. I mean, is this, have I stumbled on something here where we got a potential problem of a guy in a public situation who is doing a job of public responsibility?
There's always a problem. It could be alcohol, it could be cocaine, it could be heroin, it could be any substance that can impair you. It can be, I mean, it can be sedatives, it can be sleeping pills, it can be decongestants for
So I haven't stumbled
allergies.
on anything here.
No, you haven't stumbled on anything new. The thing is that we have to try to educate people so that they don't go ahead and do potentially dangerous things while they might be under the influence of some substance, whether it be a legal prescription narcotic, whether it be alcohol, or whether they got the flu, or whether they're impaired by a lack of sleep. There are many situations where people are impaired. I think, and if you look at the studies on workplace accidents, in Ontario, certainly by Scott MacDonald of the Addiction Research Foundation did a study, quite an extensive study. It's lack of sleep that's the problem, not so much drugs and alcohol. Okay. But so you may get isolated cases.
Listen to what Brian has just said, though. He's a heavy user. Heavy, I mean, he uses. He's not letting his kids use. 14 and 13. Why not? And I'd like him to answer. Why not?
I wish he could answer the question, but I just cut him off.
That's really sad. But here's a guy, an adult, who knows deep in his heart that this is not good for his kids.
I don't think we can. It may not be good for a 13-year-old, but he's not. I mean, I don't think we can.
You didn't answer me what age. I'd still like to hear that from you. What
I
age
would like to see. I would like to see the legal or the age where it would not be a criminal offense. First of all, I would not like to see it a criminal offense for anybody to use marijuana. I would like to have the police have the right to take it away from minors, but I don't see why.
16?
Why not the legal age for the consumption of alcohol? Leave it to the provinces.
Okay. You knew this question was coming at some point in the evening.
No, I've never done
it. You ever
it.
tried it?
Never.
You've never tried it?
Never had a puff.
You've never tried it?
I have never tried it.
You've never tried it?
I'm tempted, but I want to be able to go into the debate saying, look, I'm not using it, I've never tried it because I want to use it myself.
That is fascinating. You speak so passionately and eloquently in favor
because
of this,
this is a fundamental human rights issue. Drugs, this whole issue of the power of the state to interfere with individual behavior is a classic example of the abuse of the power of the state. That's the avenue that I take when I'm dealing with this issue. It's a human rights issue.
All right. I'm being so mischievous here. What the hell? Let's go. How old are you? Can I ask?
53.
You're 53. So 30 years ago, in the middle of the 60s, when this was big stuff, you were...
Big time stuff. My buddies, many of them used. One of my buddies used enough so that he gorked himself.
What does that mean?
He fried his noggin. He fried his brain.
Died?
No, he lowered his intelligence probably 30 points by I mean, not only this, some of the other things he did as well.
And he became a lawyer. He was headed for being a doctor.
And what, did you grow up in what, Southern Alberta?
Yeah.
You grew up in Southern Alberta, your friends were using it, you were in your early 20s, you never tried it?
Never tried it, ever. No interest.
No interest at all? Okay, I had to ask. Natasha, come on in here and help me out.
Okay, my name is Natasha. I'm 26 years old. I'm calling from Toronto. I've been smoking weed for 6 years. I do it for medicinal purposes. I suffer from severe menstrual cramps, and I rather light a joint than go out and buy a bottle of Tylenol and pop Tylenols all week for it. Another point I have for the doctor is that if they legalize it, I feel they'll be taking cash out their pocket, because how does weed or any other drug get into this country? It's the government that brings the drugs into this country, and if they legalize it, how are they going to put money in their pocket? I've seen police bust drug dealers and take their weed and other drugs and use it for themselves. If the system, like, it's confusing to me, but I feel that the system doesn't know what they're doing. If you're going to charge somebody and bust them for weed, and Carla Homolka gets 12 years, and you bust a person for weed and they get 15 years, how does that make sense?
We have heard that example already tonight, Natasha, of how the law sometimes seems rather unevenly applied, if you know what I mean. Let's continue on here. Sharon is calling from Shelburne. Go ahead, please.
Hi there.
Hi. Speak up, Sharon. We can't hear you too well.
Sorry, I was just calling to say that we disagree with it very much. I don't believe it should be legalized, and I've seen too many people who have used it. I've never used it myself, but I see what it does to people, and I don't believe it should be.
Now, you're calling from Shelburne, just north of Toronto. You're about an hour north of Toronto. You see much of this in your community?
I lived elsewhere before I moved up here.
Oh, I see. And you found that it was significant where you were before?
Yeah.
You ever tried it?
No, I haven't.
Not curious about it?
No, I wouldn't give it. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I would never touch the stuff. I just have no use for it.
How do you think it should be handled? If it's sort of criminalized right now, where you can be fined or possibly face a jail sentence, are you satisfied with that?
Sure.
You want harsher crimes? Harsher penalties?
Well, I'm not saying that. I just, same as anyone who's caught drinking, an impaired charge, someone's driving, they kill somebody, they get in an accident, of course they should be penalized for it.
Okay. Thanks for getting through tonight, Sharon. We appreciate your call.
Thank you.
Let's try one. Let's see if we squeeze one more call in tonight. Ivan, you're calling from Aurelia. Go ahead.
Yes, I am. As far as the war on drugs in general, I wanted to say that I don't think I'm getting enough bang for my buck. You know, we've been going after drugs for years. We're getting 10% of the drugs recovered. We're tying up the police. We're tying up the courts. And I sort of agree with the doctor in the sense that it should be a medical model versus a legal model.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Tell me what you mean.
If you treat it medically, put some of that money, instead of putting people in jail or tying up the courts, like they just let 2,200 people go the other day because the courts were clogged up. Give them treatment. Treat it medically if there's a problem. Give them, put the money into treatment like they do in the Netherlands, like offer them.
Sounds like a good idea. Thank you for the suggestion. Gentlemen, we have less than a minute. I want to get 20 seconds from each of you. You know, in the United States, Bill Clinton has put the big push on, despite the fact he didn't inhale, put the big push on for the war on drugs, continuing as many American presidents have. We usually emulate the states 10 years later. Should we have any reason to believe then that we're going in the direction you want us to go?
I'll say this, I'll flatter Dr. Hill. I'll say I hope we have more intelligent politicians than they have in the States. What has been done in the United States has not worked. They have one of the highest rates of incarceration in the world. Their society is brutalizing people because of the war on drugs. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked, it isn't working, and it won't work.
Is the war on drugs working?
The war on drugs is not working in the sense of getting rid of this problem. But here's my final comment. If we want to really mess Canada up, we change our laws while the U.S. laws stay the same. Can you imagine the inflow of problems from the U.S. if we changed our laws? Potheads galore in Canada.
I'd love to give you a shot back at him, but we're out of time.
Okay.
Dr. Grant Hill from the Reform Party, we appreciate it. Eugene, thank you very much for being here as well.